Hi everyone, welcome to SDH-HV Bercerita, brought to you by Sekolah Dian Harapan Holland Village. I'm Ziva and I'm going to read Around the World in 80 Days by Jules Verne, chapter 9 till 10. Here we go. Phileas Fogg spends a lot of money. The train entered the station in Calcutta and the passengers climbed off. Phileas wanted to get going right away so they could board the Hong Kong steamer in plenty of time. They had a few hours before it was due to leave. Phileas wanted to make sure Auda was comfortable and had everything she needed. Of course, that meant that Passepartout would have to run some errands. A policeman stopped Phileas just after he had helped Auda down from the train. "Are you Mr. Phileas Fogg?" he asked. "I am," Phileas replied. "And this man is your butler?" He pointed to Passepartout. "He is." "Then both of you need to come with me." The policeman walked toward the carriage and opened the door for them. Not wanting to leave Auda behind, Phileas told her to come with them. After a quiet 20-minute journey, they arrived at a small house. The policeman opened up the carriage door. As he let them out, he said, "Follow me." He led the three of them into a small room with bars on the windows. "You will stand before Judge Obadiah at precisely 8:30. "We are prisoners?" Phileas exclaimed. "Nonsense! There must be some mistake." He turned it to Auda and Passepartout. "Not to worry, we shall be on board the steamer by noon." The door opened and the policeman came back. He brought them into the courtroom. Judge Obadiah, a fat, round man, came in. "The first case," the judge called. "Phileas Fogg," the judge's clerk shouted. "Present," Phileas said. Three men came into the courtroom. At first, Phileas and Passepartout thought they were members of the gang trying to get out the bag. But then one of them produced Passepartout's shoes. "Mr. Passepartout, you are charged with illegally entering a temple. These shoes are the proof that you were indeed there," the judge said. "My shoes," Passepartout said loudly. "So you do admit you were there?" Passepartout nodded slowly. "Good. You will be fined 150 pounds and will need to spend 1 week in jail." Phileas spoke up. "I shall pay his bail. That he won't need to stay in jail. What is the cost?" The judge looked at him. "It is rather steep, sir. 2,000 pounds. Phileas took a roll of bills out of his carpet bag and paid the bail. Detective Fix stood at the back of the courtroom watching everything. He thought he had found a surefire way of keeping Phileas in India until he could get the proper arrest warrant. But now Passepartout had bail, it looked like Phileas was going to get away again. He had never imagined the robber would be so free with his money. "Good," said the judge. "This money will be returned to you once Passepartout has completed his time in jail. If he doesn't return, we shall keep the money." Phileas nodded. "That's fine, sir." He turned to Passepartout and Auda and said, "Let's go." Passepartout grabbed his shoes on the way out. "We need to be on our way to the wharf right now." With a heavy heart, Passepartout followed his monsieur. He did not enjoy having his boss spend money on mistakes that he had made. He glanced up to see Fix standing off in the corner, looking very angry indeed. For a second, Passepartout wondered what he was doing there. But he was in too much of a hurry to give the matter much thought. That is the end of chapter 9, and I will continue to read chapter 10. The voyage from India to Hong Kong. The three travelers boarded the Rangoon just in time. The steamer was just about to set off for Hong Kong. During the first few days of the trip, Auda spent much of her time getting to know Phileas and Passepartout. She told them her life story. Her father had been a very wealthy merchant who dealt in cotton. They had lived a wonderful life until he ran into trouble with the bandits. Then she told them about her cousin, Gigi Boy, who lived in Hong Kong. As on the Mongolia, Passepartout often spent his afternoons walking around the deck. One day, as he strolled along, he was shocked to see Mr. Fix. "Why, sir?" Passepartout said. "What on earth are you doing here? I left you in Bombay, saw you briefly in Calcutta, and now here you are, on the way to Hong Kong. Are you making a tour of the world too?" No, I shall be stopping in Hong Kong," Fix said. Indeed, Fix had sent another telegram to London asking for the arrest warrant for him there. It was his last chance to catch Phileas Fogg, the bank robber. Once he left Hong Kong and entered America, he would no longer on British soil. That meant Fix would no longer be able to arrest him. Fix was frustrated with his progress so far. He was tired of chasing Phileas around the world. "How is it that I haven't seen you since we left Calcutta?" Passepartout asked. "Oh, I've been seasick," Fix said. "How's Mr. Fogg?" "Quite well, and he is not a day behind time. We now have a young woman traveling with us too." Fix pretended to look surprised. Passepartout told him the story of how they had rescued Auda from the bandits in India. "Will Auda be traveling back to Europe with you?" Fix asked. No, she is going to stay with her cousin in Hong Kong. She'll be safe there." As they had done just about every afternoon on board the Mongolia, the two shared a drink of lemonade and walked around the deck. As the days passed, Passepartout began to think it was quite strange that he should keep running into Mr. Fix. And once, Passepartout had a chilling thought. "He must be following us." "That's it," Passepartout thought. "He must be a spy sent from the Reform Club. And my monsieur is such an honest man. That is just terrible." He decided not to tell Phileas. He didn't want him to think poorly of his friends from the club, so he kept it to himself. He also didn't want Mr. Fix to realize that he knew. That might cause problems between Phileas Fogg and the Reform Club. And the last thing Passepartout wanted to do was cause the monsieur more trouble. The Rangoon landed in Singapore a half day before schedule. As usual, Phileas noted this in his journal. He also sent Passepartout off on his usual errands. Auda wanted to see a bit of the island, so she and Phileas took a carriage ride. They rode through the country smelling clove and nutmeg trees. They saw full, green ferns and row upon row of palm trees. They toured the city as well, passing by interesting houses with charming gardens. By late morning, they were back on board the Rangoon, ready to set sail again. Passepartout had finished his errands and bought some fresh fruits, which he shared with Auda once she was back on board. All three bid goodbye to Singapore as the ship moved out of the harbor and set its course for Hong Kong. The first few days of the journey were uneventful. They had good weather and fair winds. About halfway through the 12-day trip, the weather turned. The sea started to roll heavily as a storm brewed. The ship fell behind schedule. This upset Passepartout, but Phileas Fogg remained calm. He spent his days with Auda and his nights making notes. One day, Fix found Passepartout pacing around the top or deck of the ship. "You're in a great hurry today," he said. "A great hurry," Passepartout said. "The weather is slowing us down and the ship is not going fast enough." "So you now believe in this around the world tour?" Fix asked. "Absolutely, Mr. Fix. Don't you believe in it?" Passepartout winked at him and then walked away. The wink confused Mr. Fix. Did it mean that Passepartout knew he was a detective? Had he been found out? The next day when the two men met up once again. "Ah," Passepartout said. "Shall we be seeing you on the way to America too, Mr. Fix?" He winked again. Fix stuttered. I don't know. It's odd. You were only going as far as Bombay, but then you were in Calcutta. And now you're going to Hong Kong. Passepartout slapped Fix on the back as he walked away. Fix went back to his cabin, lost in thought. The butler must have found out the truth. There is only one thing I can do, he thought to himself. I must tell Passepartout everything. The wind blew harder each day. The boat rolled on the giant waves. The steamer was forced to sail very slowly. Now they would be a full day late arriving in Hong Kong. Phileas was still calm, even though this delay meant he would surely lose his bet. He had used up all of his extra time in India when they had to travel by elephant, and was hoping to have made up some time. Auda was surprised that he was not at all worried about the fact that they would now miss the boat from Hong Kong to Japan. Of course, Fix was happy about the delay. It meant that his warrant had even more time to arrive. And then there was Passepartout. The poor man paced up and down and back and forth. He was so worried. When the ship finally docked in Hong Kong, the three travelers left the Rangoon and went to find out about the steamer to Yokohama. Phileas asked at the passport office whether or not they had missed it. Why, no, said the officer who stamped his passport. They had a problem with one of the boilers. It is delayed until high tide tomorrow morning. Ah, said Phileas without a hint of emotion. What is the steamer called? The Carnatic, the officer said. The ticket office is just down the street. Passepartout grabbed the man's hand. He pumped it up and down and said energetically, Thank you, you are the best of all good fellows. Luck was on their side. If the boat had not had stopped for repairs, they would have had to wait a week before traveling to Japan. Phileas booked rooms for them at the club hotel. They would stay there until they boarded the steamer tomorrow. It was set to leave at 5 o'clock the next morning. With that taken care of, he left Auda with Passepartout to keep her company and set off to find her cousin, Jija Gigi Boy. While in the market, Phileas came across a merchant who knew Jija Gigi Boy. The merchant told him that Mr. Gigi Boy had left Hong Kong 2 years ago and moved to Holland. When Phileas got back to the hotel, he sat down with Auda and told her that her cousin had moved away. At first, she said nothing. She just sat there thinking. Then, in her sweet, soft voice, she said, What should I do, Phileas? It is very simple, he said. You must go on to Europe. But I cannot be in your way. Nonsense! You're not in the way at all. It is our pleasure to have you along the trip, Phileas said. Passepartout? Monsieur? Please book 3 cabins on the Carnatic. We're all going to Japan. From there, we will go on to America. Passepartout was very happy that Auda would still be traveling with them. He skipped happily out of the room to run his errand. That is the end of chapter 10. See you again!